The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday morning show. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Cranack.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Welcome to it. Weekend editions here. It's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Mark Cranack is on assignment. Where that assignment is, I don't know. But it is important. He'll be missed, but he'll be back. Elijah, good to see you, brother. How you doing?
Can't complain. I woke up on a Saturday morning. Knocked out another couple hours of my audiobook last night, so I only have about an hour and a half left in the Two Towers. That's always good stuff. Yeah, but the main thing is I'm awake on a Saturday morning. Tottenham Hotspur is up 2-1 at the half against Everton. I'm locked in with this show, so I'm not going to be able to catch the second half, unfortunately, but feeling good at the half and ready to rock a weekend edition of Hail Varsity.
Yep, I got rolling about 6:15 this morning. Good night's sleep. Now, we were at the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill Gretna location yesterday. That was awesome to see that spot. Invite you out just off 204th Avenue if you're making your way through Gretna. And really just good setup. Really cool to see a number of the Southwest parents, basketball folks that made their way up there playing Elkhorn East last night. Got the win there. And it was just pretty good. Came home, ate healthily, which was a change on a Friday night, and got great sleep. So, yeah, we're coffee and water in this morning and a lot to get to. We'll hit some recruiting thoughts in the 2025 quarterback race. A new offer Thursday that Brian Christopherson reports from 24/7. Brandon checks in this morning. Mark is out finding the 2024 five-star quarterback, a wideout. You know, Cranack could be good at that. Cranack's is multi-talented in the media realm, in the communication field, and just an overall great hang for 20-plus years. He is absolutely the guy that could broker that deal. So maybe Brandon is on to something. We'll get you starting five. We'll get your roll call this morning. And as always, weekend edition, non-football season, streaming 7:45. And I think we are on the nose or close to it on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Can find us on the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio, Facebook on KFOR, KFOR Twitter. So those are the platforms you can tell a buddy about. Give us a review. Give us a like. If you want to critique, we're absolutely open to those arrows. Eric checks in first. Brandon second. Jocko. Make that Jocko. Jocko, bronze in at third. He says bronze, not me. Walter from outside Philadelphia checks in. 69th, his favorite number. Drunk Monk says good morning. Sup, good to see you, Drunk Monk. And Rick says good morning. Roger is checked in as well. Herdizzle says what's up. And then Tim also says good morning. So we are beyond the starting five, which is fine. We kind of let it get to the starting five, the first five in, and then we kind of round out who is part of that role off the bench. Nebraska getting monster minutes and points and production from C.J. Wilcher. That was the story of the week. Nebraska shocking Wisconsin, not just upsetting number 6, but how they came back to do it 19. If you left early, if you were there at PBA, we're not going to judge, but you missed an incredible comeback. You probably had a beer in your hand, rooting, saying, man, I shouldn't have left early. Is that a thing in your family, Elijah, when you go to sporting events?
Leaving early?
Yeah. No, me neither. Never, ever. Even to the bitter end of some hard-fought and disappointing defeats, the Schmidt family never left early.
See, and for my family, and especially with my dad, it was never about the fandom. It was always, damn it, we bought these tickets. We're going to see the whole game.
We are going to get our money's worth, whether we want a refund or not. That's fair. That's
exactly that.
fair.
The only time I remember growing up that we ever came close to leaving a game was that Nebraska-Ohio State 2011 first inaugural game in the Big Ten. And it wasn't because of the game. The game was partly to blame. But it's cold. It's rainy, kind of hellish weather. Nebraska's down big at the half. We brought my uncle, who lives out in Denver. We brought him to that football game, and he was kind of on the fence about it. He's like, all right, this kind of sucks. My dad was not enjoying the weather. My brother and I said, no. We're going to stick it out for this game. Might as well at least make it to the end of the third quarter. The weather's not that bad, and got to see a comeback there. So didn't leave against Wisconsin in basketball. Didn't leave against Ohio State in football way back when. That's probably up there for the two biggest comebacks in both football and basketball history.
It's up there. I don't have the encyclopedia next to me as far as biggest comebacks in Nebraska basketball history. I know that they were down 14 to North Dakota earlier this year. So this is the largest comeback this season.
This was the largest comeback since coming back from down 19 against Iowa in 2013.
I remember that. Was that the that was an insane overtime where Glenn went off for Nebraska against Iowa. I remember that. That was pretty big.
Let's look up the old box score.
What does the tape of Hoiberg commenting on fans leaving early? When does it get leaked? Or Dizzle asks an important question. I don't think Fred goes there. Brandon, I think there's a lot of you there. I have left the football team in Scott's tenure 3 times after the third quarter. Yeah, there was some fans that were fighting with their fandom during the Frost era just because of how the games went down. And Eric nails it. And you touched on it, Elijah, and that's a big part of my love for sports was all the games my dad took me to when I was a kid and growing up. And Eric says, I went with my dad growing up, and I take my son now. No better way to bond. And you're 1,000% right. I have not taken Junior. He's sawing logs downstairs. He's not screaming obscenities, playing video games quite yet. But I haven't taken Junior to as many Nebraska events. But his mom, Mama Bear, goes with him, especially when Michigan State comes to town. So they'll hit that, and he goes with his buddies. Somehow, some way, dirties his way into the booster section. So if he goes, he finds his way into a suite. and I never found that art form. It was always West Balcony press box expansion for me, but it was awesome. It was memorable, always memorable, and it was a great era to go. But yeah, the leaving early part, people just had seen enough, and you see it sometimes. In some of the years past with basketball, you see folks. It empties out. Tim Miles would comment on it. He'd comment to his guys in the huddle. Dude, they're leaving early. Play better. If you're just getting drilled by somebody. David checks in from Vegas. David, thank you so much. Good show yesterday. Wiltshire and Hoiberg in the starting lineup. We were talking about that a little bit yesterday.
There's a reason we don't make the money that Fred Hoiberg makes, so I wouldn't take our opinion as fact by any way, shape, or form. But we've seen a lot of Nebraska basketball, and when I see Wiltshire and Hoiberg, I see two guys that are just absolute spark plugs that I think you want to get more minutes out of. And I'm not an expert basketball brain by any means, but I feel like you can see the impact that they bring on the floor from the outside looking in. I just kind of leave it at that.
Here's what you made, and we're just speculating. Eric, shout out from North Carolina. He's hoping Nebraska. What are the regions they're projected in if they stay in? Right, there's still February. We'll get to, but Charlotte is one region. You've seen them projected. You've seen them projected in Pittsburgh. You've seen them projected in Dayton pre-Wisconsin win. You've seen them projected I saw one pairing where they're in Omaha as a 10-7, which would be awesome. And if they win that, if they get there, they'd get KU, which would be fun. That'd be incredible. David also has a first touchdown prop for us as he's in Vegas. Take a shot. Mahomes 24-1, Scantling 33-1. As it's Super Bowl week.
It's all scripted. It's all scripted. We've talked about it before on the show. Kelsey's going to get the first touchdown so we can get that cut to Taylor in the box. We all know it's coming.
Right. I think it is a Kelsey touchdown if we're going there. Say what's up to Dion. Yesterday was fun. Elijah, you set the tone right before the Friday forecast as we both whiffed on Creighton Butler last night in our picks.
It should be noted. You should most likely pick against Texas.
Right.
That game's today, right? Not last night?
It's today. The point of this, though, is the rumplement that you delivered me because I picked wrong, and I picked Wisconsin to win. So there we have it. We had rumplement shots right before when we were hearing the Kent Pavelka tribute. And thank goodness there's no 3-second footage of me on Twitter yet, because I think Elijah will get his editing knife out and maybe make fun of me.
I didn't want to throw you under the bus last night. I was going through the video and it was pretty funny. It'll come back at some point, but now is not that time. We'll find the right time to use that.
Yeah. Well, Brandon makes a great point. Can we get K-State to clean up the rest of their schedule? We'll see how they fare today, and then they have Big Monday against Kansas, and this is Kansas coming off a showdown with another number one seed. That is Houston today. So a lot of college basketball to check in on. We'll get to some football with Brandon Vogel, but there's plenty of questions here in the stream. Weston checks in. Tuck is in as well. How does the room smell there, Elijah? We're asking in reference to Will Wilson and his Inferno wing eating yesterday.
Not bad.
No, it's fine. It's door shut.
He left the antacid tablets in here.
Will left a different kind of gift for us.
Joke's on him. They're kind of tasty.
No, they're not bad, to be honest.
I was kind of popping things like candy before the show.
So let's dive into some Hoy ball here. Nebraska basketball. We'll get to some recruiting in a moment. Promise you. Brandon Vogel from Counter Read is going to be with us in about 5 minutes. The Iron Horse, Gary Sharp, will join us. And as always, subscribe to the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Check that out and subscribe to that. All the content you want, that's where the podcasts are posted in video form, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. I look at Nebraska, and are you going to tweak the lineup? Are you going to do something different for a different result on the road? And Jocko asks, any thoughts about bringing Kisei off the bench? We wrestled with this a little bit yesterday. I don't know how he'll respond. Now, the need is to start better. They started well against Maryland with their typical starting lineup. They didn't have Gary, of course, and that's a big difference. But you get Gary back in the lineup, that'll be big, and as a starter. And maybe you look at one, but not both, right? Maybe you go ahead and look at Sam. You keep Wiltshire as that sixth man, and maybe your perimeter D improves a little bit, or at least just any flow an opposing point guard can get into is delayed just a little bit by Sam. Maybe you just roll with what you've been winning with, and that's what our dear friend Bill Dolman talked about. Don't overthink it. Keep going with what you've been doing, and just hope for better response from this basketball team from a toughness standpoint for 40 minutes, not 5 minutes, not 7 minutes against Maryland. When adversity strikes and momentum shifts, can you flip it around and battle back? And they've done that. I mean, they've been good enough to build leads on the road against teams they should beat. They've not closed. They've also come all the way back from a major ass kicking by Iowa early. And they took the lead at some point. I think it was 51-50. They took the lead at Iowa City. But and you're not going to win every road game. You're just asking for one or two. And there's a comment in the stream here that touches on that no team has ever made the tournament with 0 conference road wins. So you got to go get one or two. And Herdizzle asks, I'm not sure what more they need to do when we talk CJ and Sam need to do to start. I think it's more of a role than just a starting standpoint.
And the one thing I want to add about that is there's enough people out there asking the question, are those guys going to start, that I am sure it is going through Hoiberg's mind. But those two guys are also mature enough, and during the week I spent on Hurrdat Sports Radio back about a month ago, along with some more conversations with Jacob Padilla, both better basketball minds than myself. They both kind of bring up the point, you know what? It doesn't matter pretty much who starts the game. It matters who finishes the game. And you look at the stats from Nebraska, Wisconsin. I think CJ and Sam are both mature enough to understand that, with Sam being the coach's son and CJ with all the time he's put in around here, to understand it's more important who finishes the game. If you look at the minutes, I mean, you had 22 minutes from Hoiberg off the bench, that's more minutes than both Jamarcus Lawrence and Casey. Then you also had CJ Wilcher put in 28 minutes off the bench, more minutes than both Jamarcus Lawrence and Casey. So though they didn't start the game, you could make the argument they were pretty much your starting lineup, especially down the stretch. You get into
That's who you rolled with.
That's who you rolled with. I think those guys are mature enough to understand that just because you're not in the starting five doesn't mean you're not one of the most impactful players. I don't think they need that confirmation of being in the starting lineup. My only question is you look at the start that they had there. Can you try to get a better start on the road against Illinois by putting those guys in the starting lineup? But I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised to not see a change. I wouldn't be surprised to see a change. There's my right down the middle lukewarm take. I can't be wrong, but it's not the most exciting thing for radio on a Saturday morning. But that's, again, my point. I don't think these guys are going to get caught up in that, whether or not they're in the starting lineup, whether that's going to lead to points or not. Hoiberg's going to roll with the 5 that gives him the best chance down the stretch.
Here's the other part of that. We welcome Brandon Vogel in from Counter Reed, and Drunk Monk chimes in. The good thing about Nebraska's rotation is that Hoiberg trusts a lot of guys to play.
Yeah, I went back and checked that Nebraska-Iowa game from back in 2011 that I was referencing, 2013 that I was referencing. Nebraska, outside of their starting lineup, had 12 minutes between 3 bench guys. That was all. You had Siobhan Shields play 37 minutes that game. And again, this is the comeback. They were down 19 points or 17 points against Iowa and came back. Siobhan Shields had 37. Brandon Ubel had 37 minutes. Dylan Talley had 39 minutes. Ray Gallegos had 40 minutes. He played every single minute. I loved
Ray Gallegos.
And then you also had David Rivers with 35 minutes in that basketball
Rivers
game.
was money. I liked Rivers.
And that was the game, if you remember, where, just to add it in, Dylan Talley hit that big shot down at the end to give Nebraska a 3-point lead and really seal the victory.
I'm forgetting his last name, but there was a Glenn from Illinois that came in with Roby. Might have been
it's a couple years following. Glenn Watson.
Glenn Watson, thank you. Glenn went off against Iowa. There was another monster comeback against the Hawkeyes. Vogues, we're playing with Fred's lineup here, and there's guys that I think could enter in, i.e. Wilcher, i.e. Hoiberg, that we're toying with. I don't know that Kisei could handle a demotion. I think going from these last game struggles we're talking, and I think Dolman nailed the 5, the 7, the 3. Those are his scoring tallies the last 3 games. And but he hit some big shots. I go back to Northwestern, though. I mean, he daggered that bastard and had, I think, 13. So that was his last double-digit scoring. Walter wants to know what cocktail I'm drinking out of the Stanley Cup. It is just water. It is, I promise you, it's just water. It's only 8:06 Central Time. I'm out of practice for the early tailgate run. But what are your thoughts, Vogues? First, wow, with the win over Wisconsin, pretty awesome, incredible environment. B, have you ever left games early? when you were wearing the fan hat? And then C, do you tweak the lineup?
Good morning. Let's see. I'll try to. I'm not going to go in order here. Have I left games early? Yeah, I was a partial season ticket holder, meaning I didn't have the whole season for the Boston Celtics when they were basically tanking in 2006, 7. I mean, and I forget who they were even trying to get at that point. Could go back and look it up, but point is they weren't trying real hard to be real good. So some of those midweek January night games in frosty Boston, where the Celtics were seemingly down like 18 points instantly. Yeah, I probably left one or two of those early because I lived there and I had at that point, and I had plenty more games to go to. So if there wasn't reason to stay, I would beat the traffic home on that one. Tweaking the roster, where you are for a reason, I guess. I mean, it's working, and I think we've seen. Well, we certainly saw it against Wisconsin. It's kind of, I think your point of putting Wilcher in the starting lineup. Robbie Hubbell on BTN said after that game, like CJ may have just locked up six man a year, which I think a lot of us could see that being the case. Could Tominaga handle a demotion? I don't think you even need to risk it because you can bring Wilcher in. You've got Hoiberg. Like the bench boost is, and I'm not talking to Nebraska, I think for any team is probably, well, I don't know if big time coaches undervalue it, but from like an observer / fan perspective, might be undervalued. If you're like, well, if a guy's your third leading scorer off the bench, why doesn't he start? Well, I mean, maybe he's better in those situations, but it's nice to have something that you can count on the way Nebraska's been able to with Wilcher for the most part coming off the bench. So I'd say let it ride. Go with the lineup you've got. You feel like you've got a rotation that works, and you've got some really good players who what they're going to bring for the most part coming off the bench.
Brandon, on a different note here, a lot of people in the stream talking about the best cocktail to start your morning. If you are drinking all day, what is the best cocktail to start your morning? I don't think we can go Bloody Mary. That'd be not great radio. Everyone's going to say Bloody Mary. If you want to go there, you can.
But it's true.
Yeah, it's.
I've always been a fan of the Irish coffee, personally.
Yeah, see, I've never. I like
Jameson or what do you put in the Irish coffee?
Whatever you got.
Okay.
You've heard us say coffee with a splash of brandy is the breakfast of champions.
I've got some brandy from Western Nebraska.
Oh, see now I haven't tried brandy because the coffee cocktails have never totally worked for me. I'm just not a huge fan of Bailey's or the ilk. And while I do like whiskey or bourbon, like I don't feel like the flavors have ever gone that well with coffee. I don't do tomato juice. So yeah, it's kind of orange beer might be the best bet for me actually. If you're starting early on a Saturday morning for an 11 a.m. kickoff, that's probably the way I would go. Or, well, I think this came up previously when talking to you guys for a Saturday show. You could definitely go with coffee porter or something. I mean, if you're going to have an orange beer, then and it's October, you could go that route too.
How about a vodka Red Bull? Is that too aggressive for your morning drinking?
That is blackout juice, man. Too many weddings.
Yeah, I mean, I see where you're going there, Elijah. I don't want to speak for Chris, but I'll speak for myself. At this stage in my life, I think my vodka Red Bull days are over.
Brandon, Elijah, that's like benching your 5-star quarterback and putting in a tight end. Bloody Marys are a key part of the Saturday morning tailgate.
See, that might just be my own PTSD from Broncos fans calling for Taysom Hill. Getting him in free agency this offseason, which is replacing your great quarterback with a tight end. So maybe that's the literal perfect example, actually, for what I've been going through this offseason.
Quick shout out to our friend Eric, sponsor plug for my race team, Sugarland Shine. Makes incredible Eggo sipping moonshine. Bang. I had a bad experience in South Dakota with moonshine one night.
Off the record?
No, I mean, I was with a bunch of coaches. Hey, try this. I was the play-by-play guy for Dakota State. Let's just say Saturday morning shift was interesting.
That was probably real, like, black market moonshine at that point, right?
That was like, yeah, the guy had a legit tub in his upstairs, and he had enough room to have, well, this bathroom we really don't use to shower, but this is where I make my shine, and it was diesel. It was brutal. Imagine the reaction. So what got this drinking thing kicked off is we went from steak and a beer bet to, all right, you do your shot of shame, right? We did a shot of shame. I did yesterday on Friday's show because I picked against Nebraska. Steak and a beer bet turned into, all right, shot, loser has to take a shot.
Well, it was supposed to be out of this Texas mug, but we were up at the old Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill yesterday, so it didn't make much sense to bring the Texas mug.
So if whoever's wrong Monday will take a shot out of the Longhorn mug as part of that shot of shame. And Scotty, our dear friend, our longtime listener, whenever he comes to our road shows, you've met Scott before from Shields, he buys us Rumple Mints because that's his thing. And I mean, in my reaction to the Rumple, I can't do it. It's right up there with the black licorice type booze shot.
Not a Jaeger guy?
No, hell no. Spring break ruined that.
It should be noted, when I went up to the bar to order those shots yesterday, I said, yeah, I need a nasty shot. And she goes, I need more than that. Like, what are you thinking? I said Rumple Mints, and she goes, Rumple Mints is delicious. That's not a nasty shot. And I said, exactly.
Well, back to sports, Vogues. We've kind of solved the don't risk it. That's a solid take on Nebraska basketball. As you look into February, and I'll pull up the Big Red schedule. We'll also get your thoughts on some recruiting in just a moment with 2025 quarterbacks. But the next three, obviously at Illinois tomorrow, at Northwestern Wednesday. I think it's Michigan Saturday, a week from today, that comes to Lincoln, and then Penn State. But, February's here as you find your way into March. And I'm interested here on this February forecast with Nebraska. What's needed, what's possible, and somewhere in between. Nebraska is on the right side of things, and we keep going back and forth with this discussion, but it's at Illinois, it's at Northwestern, Michigan's at home, Penn State's at home, you're at Indiana, and then you round out with Minnesota at home the 25th, and then Thursday night you're at Ohio State. From a quality standpoint, Illinois and Northwestern are 1-2. I think from a road standpoint, on top of this road schedule, Indiana would be smiled upon from a road win, as would Ohio State. Both of these teams may continue to scuffle or play below their star power, but they have the ability to flip it on and put it on you at home. So you've got, to me, some quality wins aside from obviously this next 5 days, this stretch where we know Northwestern right now is in, and Illinois is looking at a 3 or a 4 seed right now, unless they fade a little bit. Can't say anything for Indiana or Ohio State. They're probably all on the wrong side of the bubble right now. So, but they would be smiled upon road wins, all of the above. But what can you do the rest of February? I mean, do you get 1? Do you get 2? That's not a good road schedule. I don't like going to Indiana. I don't like going to Ohio State. I sure as hell don't like going to Illinois. And Northwestern, maybe a little bit vulnerable because of their gut punches, but they're still really, really tough at home. They've been incredible this year.
Yeah, they have. And I mean, even that finale at Michigan, like, Nebraska hasn't done anything on the road so far, post Kansas State, I guess, which, the bloom has come off that rose a little bit, to pencil in any of these road games. So I think, they've got 5 left. Is that right?
4 at home, 5 on the road. Yeah.
That's just February. They end the year at Michigan Sunday the 10th of March. They have Rutgers at home. They have two in March. Rutgers and Michigan.
Okay. Getting 2 road wins then for the month of February, I would consider that a win. In terms of what do we need to see from Nebraska? That's it, right? They beat the number 1, number 6 team in the country at home now, in slightly different but similarly kind of improbable ways, but not wins that didn't feel unearned by any means. So the biggest, so I guess up there of exceeds expectations would be let's see Nebraska bring a little bit of what it has at home on the road, which we've been talking about basically all year, right?
What I meant is, what's minimally doable for Nebraska? What do we need to see in February road wise? 1-4, 2-2. You don't want to go winless. So what's doable with how this team, with how we've seen this team play, even in stretches on the road, which has been the frustrating thing. I don't think they'll lose out on the road. So like I said, I think 2-2. If there's 4 games, 2-2 or 2 wins out of that, that's more than we've seen from this team to this point. So that would be a good sign then heading into March. And, in terms of being at home, that's kind of the one where I think you run into a little bit more trouble. Where you beat Purdue now, you beat Wisconsin. Creighton's the only team that's come in and put it to you on your home floor. Can you avoid, for lack of a better term, a dumb one at home? That'll be really important too, and maybe in some ways might be a better barometer of exactly where this team's at, getting ready to go into postseason time.
Brandon Vogel with us here, a weekend edition of Hail Varsity Radio. And Brandon, I want to get your thoughts on Brandon in the stream chat's thoughts. He says that if you get one of these next 2 road games, you'll put a stamp on the tournament. Obviously, these next 2 so important. With K-State falling off that quad 1 victory line, you have 2 more chances now to get a quad 1 victory in the next 2 games. I believe your only remaining quad 1 opportunity is at Ohio State. So you do have 3 more quad 1 road opportunities, 2 of them in the next 2 games. Do you agree with this, that if you get one of the next 2, you put a stamp on the tournament, kind of lock up your NCAA tournament hopes, or what's your take on the importance of these next 2 games now that you've gotten that win against Wisconsin?
Yeah, I think I agree with Brandon, which I always try to do with Brandon's. It's just one of the rules that I live by. But you add a quad 1 road win to what Nebraska already has, and that's going to be a pretty tough resume to ignore. It already kind of is with just the big home wins. But you prove something else about yourself if you go and do that on the road. Certainly would be the case with Illinois, although Northwestern would definitely be something more than we've seen from this team as well. So barring, a total collapse after that, yeah, I think that team would be in. It would be hard to keep them out at that point.
Vogue's going to switch gears. Brandon Vogel, counterread.com. And you have another offer that's gone out for the 2025 class at quarterback. Let's get into some recruiting. And this is part of the all-name team. You have Madden Emi-Alalava.
Nailed it.
And, yeah, I've been working on that freaking name for 15 minutes, I promise you. Nico Emi-Alalava is kind of the rage right now at Tennessee. You saw a glimpse of him in the bowl game, and super talented. And the West Coast family Madden right now got an offer from Glenn Thomas Thursday. Brian Christopherson with the report on this. In Nebraska, of course, Matt Zollers out of Pennsylvania is a target. St. Louis is Dylan Duff, a target. The 6'2", 6'3" is kind of the frame these kids have. Madden Super Athletic, also a volleyball player. And Nebraska targeting Madden here, Auburn, Cal, Coach Prime, the U, Ole Miss, TCU, Tennessee. And Nebraska extending that offer later this past week. And like the kid's mobility, like his arm. And I love that Nebraska is kind of going big here. You just landed a monster get with Dylan Raiola, obviously, but they're not resting. Now, I don't really think that there's too much math to do. If I'm Madden and my brother kills it at Tennessee, I follow my brother. Maybe that's the case. Maybe it's not. But your thoughts here, Vogues, on Nebraska's quarterback targets and just the reality in today's college football world. And Elijah, you'll have a take on this too, I'm sure, of going after similar to same talent level, or just what you like from a scouting standpoint for an offense, while you have the dude here, or the perceived dude here already.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you'll have to overcome the hurdle of Raiola being, well, his career just started, but I think at quarterback, when you're out there, you're pitching this as like, hey, if this goes as well as it could, like if you're as good as you are, and we do our job as well as we think we can, like, this is going to move fast. Like, you're not going to worry about this job not being available for 3-4 years, although I guess that would be the case presumably with the 2025 signee, but you kind of work around that. But I think you use the brand value that landing a Dylan Raiola gives you. And I think that's what we're seeing. It's kind of a strike while the iron is hot. At this point, he hasn't played a game. You do this for the 2026, 27 classes as you get a little farther down the road. All of a sudden, like, how Dylan Raiola is performing, like, is he still there? Does he look like, he's on his way to being a first round draft pick, which is kind of what you'd assume for a 5-star quarterback. Those things will become more important. So right now you get a benefit a little bit from the unknown. I mean, a lot of the players that you mentioned, there are also, I think we're seeing, Rule said it at, I think it was his kind of end of the year recap, talking about how he learned, he thinks, in the Big Ten. Basically, they want NFL type quarterbacks. He mentioned hand size, about being able to play in the cold, which is a thing that comes up pretty frequently. So I think, and it's changed. It wasn't that long ago when the recruiting sites used to list the quarterbacks differently, right? Dual threat versus pro. I don't think many of them do that anymore, because it's a lot blurrier now. And everybody's looking for that type of NFL type quarterback, but most of those guys aren't statues anymore. So I think that's kind of what Nebraska's looking for there.
Brandon, whenever you look at the influence of the transfer portal, does that make it more or less necessary for Nebraska to get a quarterback in their 2025 class? Because there's two ways you can look at it. One is you got the two 2024 quarterbacks. You assume Raiola is your instant starter. You think then you got Daniel Kalen to redshirt for a season and then be an eligibility 1 year behind Raiola to kind of be that guy in waiting. But then you can look at that as well as being a potential transfer portal candidate, meaning Nebraska needs to get a 2025 quarterback as kind of insurance. The other side being, you know what, you can always go into the transfer portal at some point down the road and get yourself a quarterback. There's always guys that are going to be in the portal at the quarterback position, so you can always go clean up your mistakes later. Which side of that coin are you on? Does the portal make it more or less necessary for Nebraska to get a 2025 guy?
Yeah, I kind of take it's easier to stay out of trouble than get out of trouble approach. Of like, yes, you're going to be able to get a transfer quarterback to if you need to basically kind of paper over a hole that may have emerged in your roster. But I look at Nebraska now with just 3 scholarship quarterbacks and kind of view them as they're already behind a little bit in terms of just sheer numbers. And that's, how it worked out. That's always going to be a little bit of a moving target in today's college football. So I would, if it were me, I would try and take a high school quarterback every cycle. And even if you do that, unless things just kind of season over season fall just the way you have it laid out, which is never going to be the case all the time, you're going to have guys leave. And that's really where I kind of view the transfer portal can help you. It taketh and it giveth away. I wouldn't use it to try and jump over any high school recruiting that we try to do.
Philosophically, I think Rule is spot on with, I think he values chemistry and fit, and they got to be on that same level to go with the talent, right? He didn't want to screw up a locker room, and he at least is my read is he's not willing to do that, which is great, because I think that's going to be the difference for him with the retention part to get the development. I think he's going to get a roster of dudes that want to play for him and play for their teammates and stay, even when maybe they're not where they want to be from a snaps standpoint. And they'll see the results on the field, presumably. But above all, I think they're going to just enjoy their experience. I mean, you got to and understand that their coaches and their head guy, gives a damn about them. So I think that's your differentiator for Nebraska when we talk portal and recruiting and development and classes. I think there's an honest approach saying, look, we like what you can do on the offensive line, defensive line, quarterback, running back, whatever, but understand that, we are going to go try and get as much talent to win ball games as possible. So don't be hurt if you're cool for 5 minutes, you get your spotlight. And then next year, here's this dude coming in that, oh, wow, I got it. That's how life's going to be if you want to do this thing professionally, because best guy's going to play. They're just setting them up that way. So I think that's how you go about it. And he is adamant about the high school approach first with a little sprinkling of the portal. And you just saw that here last cycle with some key faces they added, wide receiver and running back specifically, and a plug-and-play guy at guard on the offensive line. And I think it's understood. I think it's been communicated well enough for Nebraska and everyone to understand where they're at.
Yeah, I think so. I think Rule's done a good job with that. Dabo Sweetie takes a lot of heat for his approach to the portal, and for good reason. Like, he might just ride that kind of philosophical stance into the ground, which, hey, that's his call to make. But like, I think fundamentally, he said at some point, like, how can I go out and get transfers? What do I say to the guys that we recruited to be here? And if any of us were the players who had been recruited to be there, that's probably what we would want too. So you got to navigate that. And I think Rule did a good job, when it came up regarding Raiola in that first signing day press conference. He said, look, I'm not going to apologize for recruiting good players. And as long as you convey that, I think out of the gates, which I'm sure he has, all the players then know, hey, that's where we're at. And it's part of the reason, Clemson might be struggling a little bit in that regard, because out of the gates, Sweetie said, I can't do that to those guys and basically recruit over them through the portal. Well, what do you do when all of a sudden people are saying, well, maybe you need to be a player in the portal? So much of it's about how you've laid it out, and Rule's done a good job with that.
There's also an understanding that by the coaches that guys aren't going to come in ready-made from high school. it's going to take some time where you need to be dominant on the lines of scrimmage to get guys up to speed most of the time. And while they're seasoning, if you need to go get somebody in the portal, I think you look at it. Vogues, I want to get your take here on the advisory group with the SEC and the Big Ten. And is this a good thing for the future of college football? And I think they're the two big dogs are getting together to maybe hash out some rules, because I think there's a ton of coaches that are sick of this 12-month-a-year deal going on.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that after basically running the sport. The two of them unofficially, they have come together and decided to make it official going forward. I guess we can officially call them the powers that be, and know who we're pointing to at this point. Yeah. Yeah, I'll need to workshop that and come up with a better name for that group. But
you got to go something Mafia. Something Mafia just fits so well, because you can see these guys meeting behind closed doors, like hush hush, making sure the NCAA doesn't know they're meeting and running the sport secretly in the background.
The Gridiron Mafia. Yeah, we can start with that and workshop it.
A lot of walk and talks.
Yeah. Is it good for college football? I guess it depends on what version of college football you like. For me, as somebody who loves watching G5 games, who would rather have a 12-team playoff that included every conference champion, even if it means we're leaving 7 of the best teams in the country out because there's just not room. Like, sign me up for that. Seriously. I'll watch UNLV try to beat, Wisconsin or somebody in the first round of a tournament. Like, that doesn't bother me at all. But some people it does. Some people are like, well, UNLV obviously isn't one of the 12 best teams in the country. Give me the 12 best, and I can get that too. That's where we're headed. So much about college football is trending towards increased professionalisation, and some of that's good off the field. In terms of what it does to on the field, like, I don't know if it's not what I would choose, but it's where we're going. So I would expect, with the proposal that's out there for kind of a power school subdivision and the timing of this Big Ten SEC announcement of this joint partnership, I'm guessing they're probably headed towards a place where they can come out and say, here's what we are prepared to do right now, in terms of a number, in terms of money that they're ready to offer their athletes, in terms of, basically putting them on the payroll, if we call it a revenue share or whatever the terminology ends up being. And it's going to be more than the Big 12 or the ACC probably want to do, but it becomes a further way to just like submit your place and power in the sport. It's like, yeah, we've got all what, there's 30 teams there between the two conferences now, or no, 32 teams. You got a full NFL basically. Like, we can pay this. Are you guys ready? Or are you declaring yourself not part of the power structure of this sport? I think that's probably where we're going.
Brendan, to get you out here using the Mafia connection, how long until Charlie Baker and the NCAA gets figuratively whacked?
Joe Pesci. Oh no!
I would say they've got at least 18 months, but probably 2 years. Like, it's going to take a while. I mean, the Gridiron Mafia just officially formed. It's just been officially recognized. So they've got some groundwork to lay.
But sometimes in Mafia, it's important to move fast. Like you want to strike before they even know you're around.
Well, I mean, time to get to the Fed building.
I mean, and they have, like, it's like an iceberg. We only see the tip, but one day you wake up and Texas and Oklahoma are headed to the SEC, and you're like, okay, I guess they've been working on this for a while.
Vogues, what's happening with Counter Read? CounterRead.com. Tell the folks how to get in touch.
Yeah, we got some more stuff coming out from a sit down that Aaron Sorensen, my partner in this, did with Trev Alberts. Some kind of longer term stuff we've been waiting to talk with him about. So we'll have that. We'll continue to track Nebraska basketball as both men and women, as they progress through February. Should be a fun month for that. And then, boy, there's always football stuff to talk about, and that's right around the corner too. So you can check that out at counterread.com.
Vogues, appreciate you. Good to spend some time this morning. Thank you much.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
All right. The Iron Horse is in. It's Gary Sharp. Sharpie for sheriff, says Rick. Gary, good to spend time this morning, man. How you doing?
Good. I don't know that I have enough time or I would want to be in that line of work as a sheriff, but let's go.
Let's
Rick.
go. Let's keep with the Mafia theme. You know, Al Capone's brother, I think, was a sheriff in Nebraska.
Really?
Small town Nebraska. I think I had read that somewhere. Changed his name.
Such an upstanding family.
Hey, Al Capone as a younger Gary Sharp gave me blue balls.
What?
Huh?
What?
Do you guys not remember? Well,
Can we explain
Elijah,
on
you're
that?
too young. Schmidt, you might remember this. You remember when Geraldo Rivera?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. He opened the vault.
I watched it as a little kid, and I was like enamored, and I was like so excited, and then it was such a letdown.
Big time.
Yeah.
Henry Hill lived in North Platte for a while before he got it again.
All right.
Our dear friend John Baylor had his midday show, and we got Henry Hill on John's show. And he didn't say the F word, which shocked us. We had no delay system. So John Baylor's talking with Henry Hill. And Henry's wife comes in and says, we need, because he was at the Firefly out in North Platte, so he's slinging pizza and other things allegedly. And Henry's like, can't you see I'm doing an interview? I mean, it was like, that's all, the scene from Goodfellas. That's all we had, Karen. It's all the money we had, Karen. So.
Hey, Elijah, how long did you last on the floor the other night?
Not too long. Less than 5 minutes. I got my fun in for the Purdue one. This was strictly for work, going down there and getting footage and video,
I know. I saw good content.
See, I had to be careful because down on the floor, it was a real mosh pit. It was more of a mosh pit this time with the students being down there. There were really all ages down on the floor this time, but I had to make sure to watch myself to be careful. I'm not the young man I used to be, so I didn't want any injuries in a court storming. A la Caitlin Clark.
Elijah, you're still 6'4", dude. I'm not worried about you taking one on the chin. I'm worried about you going, hurting villagers. Okay. I'm worried about you just throwing, Will Ferrell bathrobe, just throwing people out of the way. That route. Sharpie, it was incredible Thursday. Yeah. You've seen a ton of Nebraska basketball. We were talking with Vogues a little bit about what February holds. And are you buying it? And I'm not talking Nebraska's magic at home. I'm saying, is this the win that actually gets them to turn the corner and have PBA, whatever's bottled up there, travel at least once or twice this month to get that elusive road win?
Possibly. So it's so wild how much different they are at home compared to the road, and that impact of the crowd. There is no doubt. If anybody wonders around the country about the passion of Nebraska fans, just look at the crowd on Thursday night. That crowd helped Nebraska. Fred Hoiberg might have peeled some paint and said, guys, wake up. And it didn't instantly click when they came out of the locker room, but then they started to make a comeback. But that crowd willed that team to get in the game. And then once Wiltshire hit the three, that's when I thought, okay, this might happen, when he made it 50-49. The problem with Nebraska is they have the same problems at home that they do on the road when it comes to athleticism. They have some lineups that are bad matchups, and they also have the tendency to turn the basketball over. So those things don't really leave them. They kind of get clouded over at home because they play with a different type of energy and dog mentality at home. here's what I'd like to see on the road. And tomorrow's going to be difficult, really, really difficult, is you just want to see them play a game where they communicate. They close out on the perimeter. They played really great perimeter defense in the second half. And they don't go into these lulls where they have these long scoring droughts and they have these head-scratching decisions. So I just want to see them play good basketball. And there's enough games on the road schedule that are left that they can do that, and they're going to be better than the team they're playing. It's just they're going to be underdogs the next 2 games on the road. But not many teams in the country have a Purdue and a Wisconsin win on their resume. Nebraska is one of the best 68 teams in the country. That's what I say. So they have to find a way to not play themselves out of the tournament, because I think they're in the tournament now. It's just, are they an 8-9 seed, or are they a let's go to Dayton team?
We'll get into your expectations for these next 2 road games here in just a second, Gary. But you mentioned the impact of the home crowd. I want to get you're an Omaha guy. I want to get your reaction to how the crowd treated Chucky Hepburn and how they've treated Chucky Hepburn for years. Well, what is your thoughts on that?
Well, so you remember 2 years ago, Chucky had lost a member, a close person in his life. And as a freshman, the Nebraska crowd treated him really well. I think I asked the question on my show, if you are booing Chucky, are you booing him because he's the best player, or are you booing him because he didn't come to Nebraska? If you're booing him because he didn't come to Nebraska, then we have to have some speaks, and we're going to have some reality of what the situation was, and that's ridiculous. If you're booing him because he's the best player and that's what you do, okay, do what you got to do, and then go, dang, that guy is slicing and dicing us in the first half. But then Chucky and the rest of Wisconsin kind of uncharacteristically had a meltdown in the second half. I think there's a lot involved here. It's who's booing. I didn't get really caught up in it. I don't think it was as big a thing this year as it was last year, because last year it seemed to turn into like a controversy. This year you knew it was coming right when he walked in the building, and he's handled it well. I'm sure it bugs him a little bit, but also drives him. He's a hell of a competitor. And I'll tell you what, I would take Chucky Hepburn on my team any day that ends in Y.
Well,
and you never say never.
Just put Chucky on Nebraska, and we're not talking about bubble. I mean, they're missing point guard play.
Well, yeah, and that just that consistent point guard play, or that guy that's a dog when you need somebody to get a bucket, that alpha on the floor. And fortunately for Nebraska on Thursday night, they had all of a sudden a lot of those guys come together, whether it be Williams or Wilcher or Rink Mast, or a guy that I think has been such a key to this run of 21-7 over the last 28 is Fred's son.
Yes,
I mean, Sam is a difference. I wondered. I think we talked on the show maybe a month ago. Do you maybe insert Sam into the starting lineup and let him play point a little bit and see what happens? I think you still keep bringing him and Wilcher off the bench, because they bring some instant energy. And just because they're on the bench doesn't mean they can only be like 20-minute guys. You could be on the bench and come in and play 35 minutes. But I think Sam Hoiberg is really kind of the epitome of that team, and he's a difference maker when he comes into the game. And you saw that on Thursday night. Man, he had a key steal. He had 3 points, 4 assists. He was just everywhere. He is that dog, and he's probably that dog also, guys, that keeps in a game like that where you got to get some stops and string them together. He keeps Keisei Tominaga off the floor.
He's the difference when it came to how that, I mean, not offensively, but just from a mentality, and also they needed to get better defensively.
Yeah,
and he gives you a little help rebounding wise too. I mean, he is big time difference maker, and he's shown up. He has absolutely shown up in their big games.
Yeah, the problem, and you guys, I know talked about this yesterday. When your 5 best offensive players aren't your 5 best defensive players, it can be a little bit rough. And, Hoiberg comes in, and he's not one of your top 5 offensive players, but he's definitely one of your top 5 defensive players. So you have to make a move with your lineup against Wisconsin. I got to get my 5D out there. We're going more for D, but we're hoping that we'll get a spark offensively. And I like when, I think Fred in the second half pushed the right buttons on his rotation and who was playing, because Williams and Mast never left the floor. And then Wilcher never left the floor. Look what happened last Saturday at Maryland. We went, why is C.J. Wilcher not playing? Why is he's the only guy scoring in the first half. Why all of a sudden is he back on the bench?
Well, Gary, if you would have gone back 2 years ago and told me that it'd be Sam Hoiberg and C.J. Wilcher, the 2 guys that would be keeping Keisei Tominaga off the floor, I would have gotten you into an asylum. Like the development of both of those guys has been astounding, I think, is a credit to Hoiberg, with CJ just getting his shot selection to a place that Husker fans could deal with, and being a positive coming off the bench. And Hoiberg, the energy and I mean, the activity he brings off the bench. 2 years ago, he's a feel-good story, kind of like Izzo's kid at Michigan State, where you think the whole student section is going to go insane anytime he gets in the game. And now you're saying, thank God whenever Sam Hoiberg goes to the scorer's table.
Yeah. Hey, isn't it wild that if Bandemill and Gary don't get hurt last year, we don't see the full impact of Sam Hoiberg or Keisei Tominaga? And especially Hoiberg, who all of a sudden started playing more minutes, and you realize, man, what an asset to this team. I think with CJ, if anybody says, hey, Fred, bring your playbook, let's talk, he should bring Wilcher with him and go, I'm a development program as well. Because CJ has kind of, ridden the roller coaster and been the punching bag of the fan base, because he would be the guy on the floor that took bad shots in a moment where they needed good shots. And it was CJ's fault. And he got banished to the bench. And there were times where he was sulking last year. And then you wondered in the offseason if he was going to stick around. And he decided to stick around. They found a role for him, which is, I think Fred's done a better job in the last couple of years communicating with his roster on what we need out of you, and this is where you're going to be. He has also developed with CJ, I think, guys, he knows what a good shot is compared to a bad shot. Like, I'm not going to shoot at the beginning of a shot clock, a corner pocket three. I'm going to let the offense develop, and if I get a good look, I'm going to take it. And I think that's the biggest growth that I've seen. I mean, he was on a heater, man. For the last 2 games, he has shot the ball exceptionally well. But if you want to go back really over like the last 11 games, he's been one of the better shooters in the Big Ten. There's no doubt he's the 6th man of the year, because what do you need out of a 6th man? You need him to come off the bench, give you a spark, give you some scoring, not hurt you on the other end if that's not their forte. And he's done exactly that.
Well, Gary, you talk about the heater he's on. I hit on this on the show yesterday. In Big Ten play, almost 50% from 3. I think the number's 47%, almost 60% from the field, and he hasn't missed a free throw.
Iron Horse with us, Gary Sharp, Weekend Edition, Hail Varsity Radio. To your point about good shot, think about that bucket he hit to tie it at 52. Yep. He didn't force a fadeaway corner. He drove baseline mid-range. It wasn't a 3, but he got a better shot versus a tough shot. And then he was still heat checking a little bit, but he was on such a scorcher, it went down. But that was incredible. And we were talking a little bit about just atmosphere and moments with Thursday night. Gary, where does that one kind of show up over the Husker landscape? I mean, you and I both, I remember bumping into you before at a tailgate, Nebraska, Miami, 2014 football, like the blood in the water at Memorial Stadium all game long, how awesome Amir was, right? Like just different level. So that's always kind of up there for me as far as just how amped the joint was, and the fans and how they really willed Thursday night along with Nebraska's second half will always be there for me against Wisconsin. Yeah. Are those kind of your 2 pillars when we talk? And you can get into baseball too. I mean, there's some baseball.
I think, of course, No Sit Sunday will always be number 1. We always talk about, hey, let's do this again. You can never replicate that day at Pinnacle Bank Arena in 2014. I mean, that's one of the most amazing sporting events that I've ever been involved with. Of course, Thursday night is right up there. I'll tell you another one that stands out. You remember the Iowa game at the end of the regular season when Nebraska had a crazy comeback and Thor was dealing? This was, I think it was 2019. The Pinnacle Bank Arena was not, I don't think it was sold out that day because it was a Sunday afternoon against Iowa. That place was rocking. But you alluded to the Miami Nebraska game. That was a game where the stadium was upside down. It's a different mindset, Memorial Stadium to Pinnacle Bank Arena. On your obligation or how you digest it. We all go to both venues. We kind of cover Nebraska football like it's our job. We cover Nebraska basketball like it's our outlet.
That's fair. That's fair.
Now, I want to throw a couple of baseball ones in there. This is going back a little bit. the clincher for the Super Regional to go to the College World Series the first time against Rice at Old Buck Belzer Field. That was an amazing scene. You remember the clincher against Miami in 2005 to go to the College World Series.
Yeah, that was big.
At Haymarket Park. And then I'll even stay with the College World Series in 2005, even though it didn't go Nebraska's way. That Arizona State game was wild.
Gertch's bomb.
Yeah. And then you had, you want to expand to volleyball. You had two of the loudest moments this season with Volleyball Day in Nebraska, and then you have the Wisconsin match at the Devaney Center.
Yeah. No, that's right there. Sharp, you're going to go to football here as spring ball's around the corner. Lots anticipated on offense. How can Nebraska make a move to a competent offense, consistent offense? But I want to get your take on the defense. And Tony White's back. You got a lot of dudes back, and you had nice success with some young guys on top of that rotation where multiple guys were getting snaps. So all that's coming back great. But what do you anticipate from a response from the Big Ten against the 3-3-5? First time you saw Tony White, first time you saw this 3-3-5, it was year one. How do offenses adjust? Can Nebraska's defense be as good in year two with a little bit more film out there on them?
That's a great question. And it's interesting when you talk to guys on Nebraska's offense and they talk about going against that defense, because they did a lot of one-on-one where Nebraska ran their normal defense against Nebraska's normal offense. And guys on offense, I remember Ethan Piper saying it was difficult. It was like a numbers game, and you had to figure out where everybody was, and you're trying to figure out your assignments, but also what the guy in front of you or the guy behind him is going to do. So it was a transition. I think, some teams that have good coordinators and good coaches will adjust and also are a little bit veteran so that maybe they've seen it for the first time. There's not a plethora of teams are playing the 3-3-5, but there's a little bit more of those looks. And Nebraska wasn't always a true 3-3-5 throughout the year. Right. It comes down to what's the game plan you have to build yourself the best advantage, whether you're a true 3-3-5 or you're playing a 3-4-4, whatever, Nebraska's variation. I think it's just guys simply getting better in year two at their job, whether it be their stamina, whether it be their technique, whether it be their angles to go for tackling. So I think Nebraska is going to be fine there. I think it helps that they're older. I think it's going to be extremely competitive during spring ball, because if you look at their three levels of how they have their scholarships distributed, man, there's going to be, it's like Survivor Island. This will be a very intense spring on the defensive side of the ball for guys that are backups or third string or kind of new to the situation. Do we really think that all of those defensive backs are going to stick around after May, especially if you've been here for a couple of years? They got a lot of defensive backs, and not everybody's going to play. And they've got a lot of good ones that are on their way that are going to be freshmen in the fall.
Any guys that they could move up a level? I asked that because of the perceived razor-thin linebacker spot. You've got some guys that are back, but you've got some unknowns.
Yeah, off the top of my head right now, I don't think so.
That hybrid?
Nobody fills the role of Gifford right away
right.
Or Wright or those kind of guys that you say, hey, that guy is moving up. I think they'll experiment a little bit in the spring to see if there's any of those guys, because you're right, they have to build some depth at linebacker. But I think they're going to let the defensive backs play out. They got a lot of guys that were in like last year's recruiting class that redshirted, and now it's time to see where your place is. Mm-hmm. Evan Cooper is going to have a good spring, like figuring out who his top four are, but also who is somebody that's not going to play. And then maybe they find, they're into the portal in May. The across the board, I'm telling you, I've been saying this for a while. Nebraska's in a really good spot with spring because essentially their roster is here. They will start spring football, and that will basically look like your 2024 Nebraska Cornhuskers, except for, a handful of freshmen that will show up in June. And most of those freshmen that are showing up, either they're probably not going to play because physically they have to develop, or they have good enough football IQ that when they walk on campus, they're not going to be just snowed under by information and the whole experience.
Gary, the biggest question to you with the 2024 Husker defense is what? And then kind of as a follow-up to that, do you think we can get that answered during spring football? And you kind of hit on that with the defensive back room. I'm also talking linebacker. The only spot that I think you're really set in stone is that interior defensive line with Nash and Ty. There are some moving pieces, but we've seen a lot of these guys before, and I think we have a pretty good idea of what this defense is going to be. With that in mind, what's the biggest question?
Can this defense turn the football over? Can they go get turnovers? Can they rush the passer? Those would be the two. And then they might go hand in hand. When you rush the passer and speed up a quarterback, he throws a pick in an area that he had no intention of throwing it there. I think the big thing this year will be, can the defense give Nebraska's offense extra possessions?
That's fair. On the offensive side, we were talking quarterbacks with Bogues a little bit earlier, and Glenn Thomas making his offer to Madden Emi Alalava.
You almost had it. You had it the first time.
I was 2 for 2 in the first hour. Okay. Emi Alalava. There we go.
Yeah,
Madden, his first name. Nico, his brother's, going to be a phenom at Tennessee. It has looked good. And Nebraska able to make that offer out there. They're targeting Duff in St. Louis, Zollers, of course, out of Pennsylvania, and Maskey committing to Iowa State this week. Yep. So that was a target that Nebraska was on early and lost to Coach Campbell. All that said, what do you see with this this quarterback recruiting philosophy here from Glenn Thomas? Go after the best of the best. I mean, that's what they're doing here, and they've got one that they're proud of course, on campus now. They get standing O's when he walks into PBA,
and has his own private security.
Yeah.
So before Dylan Raiola committed to Nebraska, they loved Alex Mansky. They think Alex Mansky will be in the NFL, and that's a very good pickup for Iowa State. Iowa State moved everything into the middle to get him, to keep an in-state kid home. I mean, they brought their entire coaching staff to his basketball game earlier in the week. That's a big pickup for Iowa State. I really like that quarterback. But it seemed like, Nebraska couldn't move it along after he came in October, even though they tried. So they immediately do the pivot to Dylan Duff down in St. Louis, and all the offensive staff shows up down there. It is important that Nebraska gets a quarterback in 25. They're not ready to use Dylan Raiola as a recruiter in terms of, hey, we got an elite quarterback. Look what we've done with him. So we can do it with you. But they do need a quarterback in the class of 25. And I like their aggressiveness. We still don't know exactly what this offense is going to look like, because I think Glenn Thomas is going to take a lot of input, and he's going to see what the strength of Raiola is before they put in a deep dive into this is what we can do on offense. But most of these quarterbacks they're offering are the same kind of guys that are not athletes playing quarterbacks and guys that have big boy arms. I really think that moving forward, Nebraska and their receiving core are going to find guys that are quote unquote track guys, but stretch the field vertically. And they just need a quarterback that can help them when they stretch it vertically. So that's kind of, I see a pattern with the offers that they're making, but I like their aggressiveness. I'll be curious to see how much involvement Glenn Thomas has as a recruiter. I don't know initially if that's the most important thing. His most important thing is the guys that are on campus to develop them. But, they pivoted right away, and we'll see. I'd like him to have a quarterback at some point before spring ball is over for the class of 25. And then we all kind of think, man, you'd like him to have a quarterback for the team of 24 as well.
Mm-hmm.
Gary, whenever you talk about what this offense looks like in 2024, we don't really know, as the coaching carousel kind of reaches the tail end, at least from what we can expect in both college and the NFL. Are we still on Holgorsen watch?
Yeah, so here's what I was told. As Dana left Houston and, got involved with Nebraska, he kind of wanted to just chill for a bit. You're coming down from getting fired as a head football coach, but he wants to stay in the game. I was always told February 1 was a time period to watch to see, if Nebraska and Dana Holgorsen could come together. So honestly, I would expect here in the next few days, if there's any news, it would come. But February 1 was, a couple of people told me, watch that. That's kind of when Dana wants to, chill, and then he'll start to say, okay, I want to get back into football. But, the interest was definitely mutual. Nebraska said, hey, we don't have a title or anything, but we'd love for you to be part of the staff. And the response was similar. It's just, where is Dana at? But February 1 was always the time. So I would think in the next few days, if something's going to happen, yay or nay, it would happen, and you'd hear about it.
I think one thing that's appealing, if you're looking at this from Dana, is you look at the analyst position, and you're still getting paid by Houston, but also just Coach Rule's reputation for working with younger coaches. Yeah. And you'd get Dana, you'd presumably look at a spot for his son to come with him. And Rule's got a great track record of not only doing that, but also, look at the kind of the coaching tree Rule's had of guys that have been with him at all his stops. They started out young, and they've been able to learn and get groomed quite a bit for whatever's next in their career. So I think that door has got to be open, not only for Dana, but his son, because I think his kid wants to stay into that in the coaching ranks.
Well, I've been told that, like Rule and Holgerson, they get all nerdy when they talk. Like they talk a lot of the same language about programs, but Rule has openly admitted that they need creativity on offense, and that's kind of why
he's creative.
That's why he's kind of drawn to Dana. So they want to pair. They want to get better with the creativity on offense, and they want to get better with coaches that can work with younger players. And so that's where Glenn Thomas comes in, because the Steelers, why Glenn Thomas was in Pittsburgh is because they brought him there because Glenn Thomas's forte is working with young quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. Okay, quarterbacks that need to be molded a little bit. And if you look at their situation in Pittsburgh, you have Kenny Pickett. He's still a young quarterback, even though he's in his third year in the NFL. And so they say, hey, let's work with him, or actually his second year in the NFL. He's a guy that can work with. So you have that taken care of. And, then you start to bring in a guy that has some creativity. I think the one thing that Rule truly believes that their window to have success is open. Raiola coming helps, but he has worked very hard in the offseason to fill those holes, keep Tony White, keep his entire staff in check, so they have some continuity. And then where they've had a deficiency to add to it, whether it be on or off the field. So he's a builder, and they're letting him build. And the more people in this program that can help you win and help you succeed Monday through Friday, so that Saturday is the easiest part of the week, I think that's what their intended goal is.
I'm going to apologize in advance to Steelers fans before I say this. I think it's funny that Glenn Thomas was brought in to work with a young quarterback and Kenny Pickett. And then after a year, he went, I'm out. Nah, I can't do it anymore. No, not Kenny Pickett.
Yeah. I think, you kind of...
Still time to turn the corner.
Whether or not that's reality, I'm going to spin it that way.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That'll make Steelers fans feel really good about their quarterback. And also, if you look at the 2022 NFL draft, who was drafted in front of Brock Purdy?
A lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sharpie will wind down with this. The Iron Horse, Gary Sharp, with us. So a couple of different interviews with Nebraska's interim president talking about athletics and academics, shaking hands, and that's always kind of been the thought, but not always been the reality. And a couple of quotes from Chattel and Mitch's stories this week about the future of the Big Ten and Nebraska's future in the Big Ten. AAU and its importance was talked about, Nebraska needing to get back to that level as an AAU member. But do you worry about Nebraska's place in the college football world in the long term? We touch on this commission, as we call it, with the SEC and the Big Ten getting together, right, to form this advisory committee. Well, we don't know, as the president's been quoted saying what college football is going to look like the next 5 years, 10 years. Yep. Do you worry about Nebraska's place?
A little bit, but I will tell you it's significant that they became a member of the $200 million club.
Yes.
I mean, I think moving forward, finances will be greater than geography in the college landscape. Now, that may come true not for another 10 to 15 years, but I think the finances are a big part of it. It's interesting that Trev and now the interim president, they have dropped breadcrumbs about, hey, Nebraska doesn't necessarily have a seat at the big boy table. We might have this passionate football program in a big stadium, and we're thriving in a state of 1.9 million, but that doesn't guarantee anything. So let's make sure that we can guarantee success. So we're in the $200 million club. We're making strides to get back into the AAU so that Nebraska is protected. Nebraska is still a strong brand. You guys look at the TV ratings. Yeah. And now that they're in the $200 million club with Ohio State and Michigan, I think that says a lot. I think Nebraska is positioned really well. But as you guys were talking with Brandon and you guys talked yesterday, man, it is, if you are not in the Big Ten or the SEC, it is scary right now. I mean, I look at the ACC. I look at the Big 12. The Big 12 releases their schedule earlier this week, and I was like, ooh, it's very underwhelming. It's like, oh, they got a bunch of flyover programs, and you're looking, okay, where is our money at? And then back to the ACC. You're thinking, all right, we don't have as much money as the Big Two. What are we doing? And then you have, and I think it's more of a Boston College thing, you have the head coach of Boston College leaves to go to be a DC at Green Bay. Again, I don't think it's I think there's part of the grind in the new era of coaching college football, but I also think that's more of a BC problem where Hafley was on the hot seat. BC doesn't have the funds to compete. And so, man, that DC job, when I've been in the NFL before, which is another caveat for Hafley, I'm going back to the NFL. If I'm BC, I'm like, man, can we compete? How can we compete with the Big Ten and the SEC?
You can't. The last part of this, can you win? And sadly, can you be great TV? I mean,
yeah.
Are you a matchup folks want to tune into? Yes, Nebraska still draws TV numbers. You look at Thursday night on BTN. Yep. That was awesome. It was a great advertisement. So can you do a couple of things? Can you compete? Can you win? Can you be a player in a playoff era? But are you doing something right? Are you drawing the eyeballs? And you still have that helmet ability, right? You're still a helmet game.
Yeah. At one point though, you have to win. I mean, that might not be number one at the top, but it's got to be in the top five as okay, what do they bring to the table? Because Nebraska's entry into the Big Ten in terms of football and winning has been completely underwhelming compared to the expectations when Jim Delaney and Tom Osborne were standing in downtown Lincoln in a building going, welcome to the Big Ten.
When you talk
about
that
day?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I was there. We talked to the commish. It's cool.
When you look back to that day, Gary, what does that tell you about Tom Osborne's foresight to be able to see the future of college football in the landscape? I don't think he was getting lucky now as I look back that, he just happened to pick a conference that is going to rule college football 15 years down the road. What does it say about his foresight?
I think he was protecting Nebraska. Yes. I think the one thing about T.O., he's always been in it for Nebraska. That's where I think it's important for the athletic director at Nebraska to be in it for Nebraska because that's who you are. Also, you want to, play well with the shield, but Nebraska is first and foremost. That's where Sean Eichhorst, crazy. He was always putting the Big Ten ahead of Nebraska. Like, instead of fighting for Nebraska's needs, it was like, okay, I guess this is best for the Big Ten. Well, if it's best for the Big Ten, that doesn't necessarily always mean it's best for Nebraska. I mean, you got quite the variation of programs in this conference, and I could never figure that out with him. Because, the whole Black Friday thing, you are the athletic director in Nebraska. You fight for Nebraska's place at the table, for what is good for Nebraska. And then you try and meld those together. That's what I would say about T.O. T.O. saw what was going on with Texas, and he said, I got to do what's right for Nebraska so that we don't get caught. I mean, it's one of T.O.'s top moments in his affiliation with the University of Nebraska is having the foresight to get together with the right people to say, we got to do what's right for Nebraska. And look at this, guys. I mean, we sometimes clamor for those short road trips and our friends in the Big 12. We're not going back. No. And now we don't know what we're going to next down the road. what that looks like.
But imagine being where Nebraska's at record-wise, still in the Big 12, and trying to jump up to this new seat that you need to be in with the Big Ten or the SEC.
That's a great question for both of you guys. And we kind of got sidetracked here. If the Big Ten was expanding today and Nebraska was still in the Big 12, would Nebraska get a phone call?
No. I mean, all things being equal, if they had fallen off a cliff record-wise and they're going 4-8, hell no.
Yeah, it's kind of
they were winning. They got an invite at least.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So again, to add to Elijah's point, I mean, T.O. was in it for Nebraska, and that's what you should be. Matt Rule. Hey, this is what the Big Ten would like. Well, this is what Nebraska would like, and this is what's important to us because we're not created like Michigan and Ohio State. We'll play along, but man, I'm in it for the N. Whatever is best for the N, and then we'll try and incorporate what helps the league as well.
Well, here's another question. If Nebraska didn't leave for the Big Ten, would they be in the place that they are right now, record-wise, in order to get a call? Now we've opened a whole can of worms and a whole hypothetical discussion.
I mean, I think originally they would be in a better spot because they had a better knowledge of the Big 12.
Yeah, sure.
They were built to play in that conference. I don't know. It's along the way, just poor decisions that have been made in hiring and just the approach that has probably limited Nebraska more than anything.
Turnover's the word on the field and off, right?
Yeah, I mean, look at Gene Smith is retiring in July, and he's been the athletic director at Ohio State since Nebraska's been in the Big Ten. Yeah, it's all about stability, and I think that's important moving forward for Nebraska across the board, whether it be sitting behind a desk or coaching a team.
Sharpie, what do you got going this weekend? Any games you're calling?
No, have the weekend off. So great slate of college basketball today.
Today's awesome.
Oh, it is fantastic.
You got any locks for us, brother? You got Houston, KU. You've got Carolina, Duke tonight.
I am off the grid. I had the exhilaration of the Nebraska game on Thursday, and then whatever that was in downtown Omaha last night, 99-98, Butler beating Creighton. I mean, Creighton's got to do a better job of helping Nebraska's net rankings.
Well, K-State's got to step up Monday night with KU coming to town. So the long and short of this is Elijah and I are picking you up, and we're taking you to the sports book in an hour.
Hey, did you guys think on February 3rd that both Nebraska and Creighton would have the same record?
No, absolutely
not. Now, not all records are created equal. I get that. But Nebraska is 16-6 in basketball on February 3rd, and in bracket matrix this morning, they are a 9 seed in the NCAA tournament with 0 conference road wins, but 6-0 at home and 6-0 against the spread. What a weird year. Don't
tell me about being 6-0 against the spread. I felt that pain yesterday.
Well, there were a lot of people, Schmidt.
Elijah?
Schmitty, there are a lot of people that may have took Nebraska 1.5, and then at halftime they were thinking, "Wow, that was a terrible decision." Never count out the power of PBA.
No, that's absolutely true.
Hey, I do need a prop though from both of you guys, and not really a prop, but a prediction because I'm curious to close on basketball. What does Keisei Tominaga look like tomorrow against Illinois on the road?
I think it is go time for him. What I mean by that is he needs to look like Purdue Tominaga. He needs to come out and be that efficient and not hunt his shot, not take bad shots, not force it, and not have his arms crossed on the bench when he gets subbed out for it.
That's where I was going to go. I was going to say, first time he gets subbed out, check out his body language on the bench. That'll tell the story. That might come down to, does he hit his first couple shots or does he not? But the first time he gets subbed out, the first time C.J. Wilcher comes onto the floor, assuming there's not a change to the starting lineup, look at Keisei Tominaga on the bench. Look at his body language. I think that'll tell the story of how the rest of his game goes.
Let's talk motive. What's the motive? Is it get to the next level and I got to be the showman, I got to be the star, or I'm crossing my arms because I'm not helping my team? I can't get into
so I think his shot is off a little bit. So there's something mechanical that is going wrong in his shot. He got benched on Thursday because he couldn't play defense. I mean, they couldn't have – you can't have him and Hoiberg on the floor at the same time because then it just develops mismatches. He got benched because of his defense, but I hated his body language. And as Elijah pointed out, there was one time on TV where they had Wilcher and Tominaga side by side on the bench, and you would have thought they were watching different games.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a bad look. But I don't – Fred's not thrown into the scrap heap. He knows how important he is. But Casey sometimes gets caught up in his feelings. And also when Casey doesn't have the ball in his hands, because Nebraska doesn't have really that guard that gets downhill and can kick it out.
Yeah.
Casey doesn't, all of a sudden he stops moving. Some of his best games this year is when he's back to that nonstop moving. He's coming around screens, he's cutting, he's curling, and he gets the ball and it's a catch and shoot. I look at the Northwestern game, which ironically is probably the best game that he's had in the last 4.
Yes.
I think they move him right back out there. But if he can't play defense, I don't care if he's hitting, 3 after 3. If he can't play defense, man, he's going to have a hard time staying on the floor, especially in crunch time. And
he's sick of getting bumped and bruised and shouldered with his cuts.
And that's where it comes to, okay, maybe you don't have to have constant movement, but our guys getting him the ball. The Rutgers game, at the end of regulation, they drew up some plays, especially for him. Mass just was slow in passing the ball or didn't pass the ball. Mass was much better at moving the basketball around the other night. I don't know. He's one to watch because Nebraska needs him. Okay. Mm-hmm. They need that outside shooting for a team that doesn't consistently just bang 3 after 3 after 3. And you never know, is Williams and Mass going to be the same that they were on Thursday night on the road? I'll just be very curious on his body language, of course, and then if he gets going early against Illinois, because Nebraska is going to have to find a way to keep their head above water to stay in that game, because I think Illinois will come out just firing. Late Sunday, student section, place will be fired up. Illinois' got Shannon, who is fit right back in, and they look like a juggernaut. You don't want that game to go south, too soon.
Nebraska could play their ass off
and still lose by 15.
Yeah, defensively, energy and intensity-wise, and shoot like they did against Wisconsin and still get smoked.
Yeah, but you would say, okay, yeah. Not many people are going to go into Champaign and win, but you're right. How did it look? That's the thing is, all right, does it look different from last Saturday against Maryland?
Yeah, it's got to. It looked like garbage against Maryland. It looked like garbage against Rutgers. Then you just didn't finish the job with Minnesota.
Yeah,
and they just didn't have any Wisconsin offensively, they were fine. They just had no answer defensively. I mean, Wisconsin doesn't score 85 against any. That's not them offensively. They look like the freaking Showtime Lakers.
50-50 balls. Their athleticism all of a sudden isn't going to get fixed, and it seems to get magnified on the road when guys are grabbing offensive rebounds, and they're going to have to rebound well. But the 50-50 balls, you look at some of these road games, they haven't won those. What did they do on Thursday night when they started to make a comeback? Any 50-50 ball, they were beating Wisconsin in the second half. It wasn't Hepburn that was on the floor or anybody else that was grabbing that offensive rebound that was up for fair game. They need that tomorrow. We'll watch and we'll go, oh, I guess Nebraska's not going to be in the tournament. But I think they've got a place now. They just need not to play themselves out of the tournament.
Sure. Sharpie will, again, be up in an hour. Sportsbook Roadie for the weekend edition. Love it.
I got one more thing. I know I'm the one doing, hey, one more thing.
No, you're good.
I got nothing better to do for the next 6 hours.
Hey, have you guys, so next Sunday, we're going to, we'll have the Super Bowl, but Caitlin Clark comes to town, and she could set the all-time scoring record. Do you know, you guys ought to look at the props that are out there for when she's going to score her record-setting point. There is, like, if you go to FanDuel, there is a list of props on Caitlin Clark for the Nebraska game next week. If she averages 34.7 in the next 2 games, she'll have a chance to break it in Lincoln.
Buddy Iowa Russ is going to that one, and he got in, I don't know, months ago to get seats for it, and because he grew up just outside of Iowa City, and it's hard as hell to see her in Iowa City, and he's like, this is my shot to see her. And
it's the most expensive ticket for a basketball game in PBA on the secondary market.
What's the number at now?
Your get-in price, if you want to sit in the 300 level, is about $340.
My Lord. Iowa Russ may be selling that, and we may be going to the bar.
You know what I envision? I envision a lot of Nebraska fans. Mom and dad will come in Husker gear. Their daughters will come dressed in a 22 Iowa jersey.
For sure.
Is there a line, Gary, out there for Nebraska winning and Caitlin Clark getting trucked again after the game on the court?
Is that part of the prop?
Can I bet on that?
Hey, that would ruin a lot of things. I mean, for Nebraska to win that basketball game, I mean, Nebraska needs to add to their resume on the women's side as well, even though looks like they're an 8 or a 9.
Yeah.
And we have history next week.
Showtime, Super Bowl should be good.
Well, and I guarantee you will have a lot of celebrities will be in the building to support Nebraska on that day.
That'll be big. Any hints? Any celebrities reached out?
That Dylan Raiola will be there.
Well, of course.
Matt Rule, who will be there, who still has not taken down his tweet about the officials from Thursday night, which is fantastic. Yeah. I was waiting for the Big Ten to call up Trev and go, hey, you got to tell your football coach to delete that tweet.
Is there going to be a GoFundMe for a fine for Rule like old Chris Collins got?
He left room for plausible deniability. He was tweeting about Madden, like he was playing his son in Madden, something garbage happened. He's got plausible deniability. He's good.
Yeah.
Way to phrase it. That's the next episode. Next week, Big Ten officiating. Go.
Ooh. Well, it was good to see that Isaiah Pacheco's dad was working the game the other night.
Oh, Lord.
The high knees?
Jeffrey Anderson, who is not well liked in the Big East. He's not working as many Big East games this year, so he shows up in the Big Ten.
And next year it's, hey, look, Jeffrey's off to the Pac-2.
Hey, Jeffrey inspired me. I'm bringing high knees to the baseball diamond this spring. When I'm making my way from first base to second base on a double to the gap, you better believe I'm going high knees all the way over.
Don't do it. Just.
Hey, so when you get done with the plate meeting and you're working the bases, that's how you should run down the line to your position behind first base.
High knees. There's no walking on the baseball diamond once that game gets going. If you're out there, show some hustle. I'm going high knees, baby.
Roger Craig tribute. Sharpie, appreciate you much.
Great recall there. Yeah, Roger Craig's high knees were impressive.
Dude, he's the best. I loved the Niner Big Red backfield. Rathman and Craig and
he's one of the best fullbacks. He's one of the best fullbacks Nebraska's ever had.
He was. He was a fullback with the Niners his first 2 years too.
I mean, Mike Rozier pushed him to be a fullback. Think about Craig and Rozier on the same roster.
Think about the freshman team in 1980 that beat the hell out of the varsity. Yeah. Gill, Fryer, Rozier.
Yeah, not bad. I miss those days of freshman
Remington.
Yeah. Oh God.
Stein Cooler.
you talk about the high knees of Roger Craig, though. And I'll never forget. We had Slick Steele. Rest in peace to Slick. He was a middle school football coach for us at the Union Bank midget football team, and he'd always talk about Roger Craig's high knees, saying like, if you tried to go low on Roger Craig, you're going home with a concussion. So, because you just get a knee to the jaw.
Slick was wide out, wasn't he, for Nebraska?
Yeah. Hey, wouldn't it be nice? They've done a good job of opening up the door for former alums. Wouldn't it be nice to have a spring where you have a Rathman and Craig appearance in the stadium?
It'd be good. We talked to Tom more often than we should. Coach is awesome. Last time he was at a Home Depot returning his daughter's vanity, and I think he lived just down the road from Tom Brady, so he knew Tommy as he calls him. But Rathman just he gets back to Grand Island. He tells us. A couple times a year. And then Roger, we talk with Roger's brother. He'll listen and call in. He's an over the road trucker. And, it just sucks for Roger to not be in yet.
Yeah.
The Hall of Fame.
Well,
it's just brutal. And I know we're a little bit homered with
how
much we love, but his numbers are legit. Yeah. And he was the first, 1,000-yard receiver rusher. I mean, Marshall Faulk's in.
Yeah, he was before his time.
Big time.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see if RC can get the veterans in. So, Sharpie, appreciate you, brother. I always love these chats, man. Thanks for waking up with us.
Thank you. It's so much better without Kranick.
Kranak's on assignment. Again, finding that 5-star wide receiver somewhere in this country.
Hey, thanks, guys. Have a great week.
See you, Sharpie. Talk to you soon. All right, that'll do it for the weekend edition. Hail Varsity, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt. Subscribe, tell a buddy, give us a rating. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play with the Hail Varsity pod and Hail Varsity YouTube. Check that channel out. Subscribe. KFOR Facebook, KFOR Twitter. And you guys are awesome in the stream. Thanks so much for waking up here with us on Saturday morning. Elijah, have a good weekend. We'll maybe clink a glass here later, and we'll be back at you Monday at 4 on Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.